นะคะในส่วนของเซกชันที่4ของเรานะคะวิทยากรของเราก็พร้อมแล้วนะคะก่อนอื่นนะคะจะต้องขอบอกกันนิดนึงนะคะว่าเซกชันถัดไปเนี่ยทุกท่านจะได้พบกับสปีกเกอร์จากองค์กรชั้นนำระดับโลกนะคะทั้งจาก Google นะคะ Meta Microsoft นะคะที่จะร่วมพูดคุยในประเด็นของ AI Governance นะคะกับการสร้างสมดุลระหว่างนวัตกรรมและกรอบสำหรับการดูแลนะคะความรับผิดชอบภายใต้แนวความคิดปฏิบัตินะคะเหมาะสมกับการเปลี่ยนแปลงในโลกอนาคตในหัวข้อที่โลกกำลังจับตามองค่ะ
And the next topic is going to be the shaping AI governance for a responsible future, balancing AI innovation and governance, and many representatives of the big organization, Google, Meta, Microsoft as well.
And in this topic, we will lead you in English. So may I invite the moderator, Dr.Sak Segkhoonthod, Senior Advisor of ETDA. ขอเรียนเชิญนะคะท่านดร.ศักดิ์ เสกขุนทดค่ะทำหน้าที่เป็นพิธีกรในเซกชันนี้ค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือดังๆให้ท่านด้วยค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ
And also may I invite Ms.Eunice Huang, Head of AI and Engineering Tech Policy for the Asia Pacific region, Google. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to warmly welcome Ms.Eunice Huang. ขอเสียงปรบมือดังๆด้วยนะคะให้กับสปีกเกอร์ของเราค่ะ
And also, please join me welcoming Mr. Maciej, Surowiec, Public Policy and Government Affairs Lead by ASEAN Microsoft. Last but not least, Dr. Arianne Jimenez, APAC Meta Head of Privacy and Data Policy Engagement of Meta.
And she will join us online by Zoom.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for our session, please.
ค่ะขออนุญาตมอบหน้าที่นี้นะคะให้กับดร.ศักดิ์ค่ะ
Okay, thank you very much. This session will be in English, unfortunately. We have 3 speakers from the 3 biggest techs in the world. Hi, Dr. Arianne, can you hear us?
I could hear you loud and clear. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay. Actually, I have actually spoken to all of 3, and you know the drill, right? Okay. Before we start, I like to give you an overview that now because of ChatGPT came out 2 or 3 years ago, people, especially in Thailand, I mean, it's like crazy. Everybody is just like, oh, it's amazing. And then we have Google, we have Meta, everybody just, okay, we want to do everything AI. One of the questions I think myself got is that, is it okay? As an ETDA, we are digital regulator for Thailand. We need to answer this kind of question. Is it okay to use your AI? Can we trust you? So you have 30 minutes, right, to answer this question for the Thai people who are here, and actually I think we have Facebook Live as well. So my first question would be, let each one of you to introduce yourself, your company, and your AI service and product, so that we know what kind of things we are dealing with right now. So may I start with Dr. Arianne first, please? Thank you.
Happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me properly. Dr. Sak, would you be able to confirm that I'm being heard loud and clear?
Sure. We can hear you clearly.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. And my sincerest apologies for not being able to join you in person today. I had surgery recently because I was injured while training for your national sport, Muay Thai. I look forward to my next visit to Thailand to resume my Muay Thai training and to continue our AI discussions. And thank you to our organizers for giving Meta the opportunity to share about some of the work we're doing on AI, in particular about responsible AI and our views on AI policy development. But as was stated, to begin, please allow us to first share about how AI is being used by Meta. Since 2006, we've been using machine learning and AI to power all of Meta's apps and services. And our AI work comes in 2 areas. I hope you can please proceed to the next slide. All right. The first is the massive recommendations and ranking infrastructure that powers all of our products. from news feeds, which is what you see when you scroll through Instagram and Facebook, to Reels, to our online advertising system, to our integrity systems that helps keep people safe on our platforms. And we've been working on those for many years. The second part of our work could be the new generative foundation models that are enabling entirely new classes of products and experiences. Meta is also an industry leader in generative AI research, and we're using generative AI to power new experiences in our family of apps, such as our AI agents, our AI stickers, and also AI-powered image editing. The focus of our generative AI work is to help users better connect and express themselves, and they will also help us better serve the small businesses that rely on our platforms to reach customers. What you're currently seeing on your screen right now, which I'm hoping is saying how is AI used at Meta, you'll see that we use AI in various ways at the company to enhance user experiences and also to improve internal processes. So there are various AI tools employed by Meta, which you see on your screen right now, such as computer vision, natural language processing, automatic speech recognition, content clustering, similarity detection, multimodal understanding, and also large language models. We also use AI for things such as ranking the content and the ads you see on your Meta platforms, such as Facebook and Instagram. We use that to predict your interests, to enforce policies, to help keep people safe on our platforms, providing video captions, which is an accessibility tool, an AI assistant, avatar generation, and also detecting manipulated media on our platform. So simply put, AI has a significant impact on improving user engagement, on enhancing safety, and streamlining operations within the company. Next slide, please, which would be my last for this segment. AI plays a crucial role in helping people discover new communities and also new content on our platforms, including Facebook and Instagram. So by using AI-driven recommendations, users can dive deeper into their interests and discover new things, which also helps support creators of content in finding new audiences for their work. I could say, for example, that more than 20% of content in a person's feed right now is recommended by AI from sources they don't even follow, which enhances their overall experience. So I'll pause there, and I hope that gave all of you in the audience today an idea of how AI is being used at Meta. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Arianne. I think we, in Thailand, I think we have something like 40 million Facebook users. That's a lot. So we know now, I mean, they have new services, using AI. I think I just read from the news the other day that, now Meta is going to do something like when you, use AI to draw a picture, you're going to have some sort of a caption, saying this is made by AI. So, I mean, what is the thinking behind this, Dr. Arianne?
I believe, Doctor, that you may be referring to one of our watermarking initiatives. So eventually, and we hope to roll this out very soon in Thailand, we're going to have a feature which is called /imagine, which will allow people to generate images on various Meta platforms provided by us, for example, on Facebook Messenger. But we do recognize that since this feature has the ability to generate photorealistic images, we want to ensure that people understand that those photorealistic images are created by generative AI. And that's why we will be undertaking these watermarking efforts and to place a little watermark on those photorealistic images to communicate to people that these types of images were indeed created by generative AI.
Well, we can actually talk more during the second question, on the responsible AI. Thank you very much. Now, can I pass to Ms.Eunice from Google? Okay, please introduce yourself, your company, and your AI product and service.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to be here. My name is Eunice Huang, and I lead Google's AI regulation and policy work in Asia. Google has been, I don't have a nice slide, but Google has been an AI company for a long time. AI has underpinned many of the services that you use with Google tools and products, from you may not even know that you're using AI, right? For Gmail, for example, we have employed AI to weed out spam. So AI has been weeding out like 99% of the spam from your inboxes since a long time ago. So many people who interact with Google tools, photos, Gmail, search, YouTube, have actually been using AI for a long time. It's in many of our products, like Meta. It's used for recommendation systems in YouTube, for example, when they recommend new videos that are aligned to your interest. It's been used in photos for you to sort out photos and group and recognize faces. But I think what has captured the world's attention, as you said, Dr. Sak, is this whole new thing, generative AI, right? Which really came from Google research, back in 2017. This paper called "Attention Is All You Need," with the transformer architecture of AI, that really enabled generative AI to be sort of used and also to be developed across many economies and many companies. Today, really, we are, as you may have seen from the Google I/O last month, we have been very, very much focused on Gemini, which is our large language model that is multimodal. And that really means that it's trained not just on text, but on images, videos, audio, and you're able to interact with it in many, many ways. So for example, you're able to put in an image and it's able to come up with a response via audio. And we have also released open models called Gemma, which has had an upgrade as well during the recent I/O. So we are really engaged in AI across all our services, products, and also I think just touching on one point, we have been using AI, doing a lot of AI research to do a lot of AI for social good projects. So actually there's a Google booth right over there, and you would see on display 2 projects, one of which I'll talk a little bit more about later, but it's in areas of healthcare, climate, education, and we're really engaged in how to use AI to make lives better for people.
I have one question. Is Google Map AI enabled?
Sorry?
Google Maps.
Yes,
Do you
of
use
course.
AI for Google Maps?
Yes. Yeah. Routing traffic patterns.
Use AI.
Yeah. AI. Yes.
Well, no need to talk about Google. We have been using for many years. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, to you, Mr. Maciej, from Microsoft. Please introduce yourself and everything about ChatGPT and, I don't know, Copilot and so on.
Thank you, Dr. Sak. My name is Maciej Surowiec. I head government affairs for Microsoft across ASEAN. Relatively recently here moved to the region, so still learning a lot about the region. I don't fight Muay Thai yet, but it's something I can maybe consider in the future. I'm with Microsoft. Microsoft is, I guess, world's leading cloud and AI company at this stage. We have just announced a couple of weeks ago our first data center expansion to Thailand. So that's going to underpin a lot of our work here in the country, but also more broadly in the region, and super excited about this. And Dr. Sak, instead of talking about what do we do as a company, I thought, your question, which you asked me backstage, what's coming? I'm a geek, and last week we actually had a Microsoft Build conference, which is when we get our developers from around the world and we give them a little bit of pre-release. What are the great big things coming up now? And I feel like some of those, I'm not a terrible great salesman, are probably worth thinking about. The first one, which I found super exciting, is the fact that AI is coming to hardware. So think about the PC that's going to have neural processing units, which are going to be able to process hardware, but at the same time leverage the power of the cloud to deliver AI in a much faster and simultaneous way with the work you're doing. So just getting the work done in a very different way. The second one, which I was even more excited about, and you and I touched upon it backstage as well, is towards the direction what some people call multi-agent systems or AI agents. And what's interesting is so far we use AI by prompting it. We ask a question, we give it a task. But think about AI turning into agents which can be added to your teams, to your group, and take actions without being prompted, but actually helping the team manage projects, getting advanced the work, and actually following up on those. So that's just something that's going to change the dynamics, where you're going to see agents stepping into their roles much more proactively, and especially when they start collaborating in multi-agent systems further down the path. And the third one, which I think touches upon your very first question, can we trust you? One of the key questions of trust is about making sure that the user experience is what it aspires to be, and not necessarily recommending people to eat rocks every day for breakfast. And that's something what's super important as agents becoming much more customized. And one of the things we bring into market now, we offer organizations ability to create custom filters and train your own co-pilot models in order to avoid some of the pitfalls and provide advice and provide help in the way expected. And in this particular example against bullying, so think about safety, but this may apply to many different domains, and we're super excited to see what organizations are going to do with this capability as well.
Well, very exciting to hear about the AI agent. I think I'm very looking forward to it. I mean, we've been using, seeing movie like the Iron Man, Jarvis. I think we want something like that. Is it possible to have that?
Well, I think that the art of possible today, like 18 months ago, we wouldn't expect AI to have capabilities it has now. So we probably all stopped trying to predict the future, because the future is happening so fast. And at the same time, we're still learning about the capability. So that's just something we're going to all discuss now. But we're keen to learn from organizations like yours here in the room what works and what doesn't, get this feedback and help create and ideate and innovate together.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we pass to the second question, which is the highlight of this session actually, which is how you guys approach AI governance, responsible AI. May I ask Dr. Arianne first?
Sure. Thank you so much. And I hope you can also see my screen or the slides. It should just say responsible AI at Meta. At the top of this session, we were asked by Dr. Sak, can we trust you? Hopefully this segment will help answer that question of whether we can trust the big technology companies when it comes to AI. For us, and my way of personally responding to that question is by telling people about how we approach responsible AI at Meta. Responsible AI is important because it guides organizations through challenging issues, frankly, such as privacy, fairness, accountability, and transparency. And as Meta's head of privacy and data policy engagement, this is something that's very close to my heart and I find personally very rewarding, a very rewarding area to work on. Next slide, please. So when it comes to our approach to responsible AI, previous slide, please. Let's talk about a few things for now. Let's start with privacy, fairness, accountability, and transparency. On privacy, AI, for example, will continue to be addressed in Meta's robust privacy review process, with privacy risks identified, mitigated, evidenced, and monitored. Second, on fairness, Meta commits to continue to address AI fairness through research, specifically through the creation and distribution of more diverse data sets. I'm pretty sure that those people in the room are very aware of the importance of diversity when it comes to AI. And this is why the creation and distribution of diverse data sets is something we consider very important. And of course, also responsibly scaling our fairness tools and solutions. On accountability, Meta is developing an end-to-end AI risk management solution informed by the US NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology Risk Management Framework and Playbook, which I understand, hopefully I picked some of it during the previous session, was also touched upon by the speakers. And lastly, on transparency. Meta is committed to transparency and explainability through tools like Why Am I Seeing This?, through artifacts such as AI system cards, AI model cards, and additional user transparency initiatives, which have as its goal to explain to people whether you're an expert, an academic, a regulator, or the ordinary person on the street who just loves interacting with Instagram and Facebook. We want people to understand how our generative AI tools work from the time that they put in a prompt to the time that they receive an output. Next slide, please. Now, before releasing a model, we work to identify, evaluate, and mitigate potential risks. through several measures, which may include, number one, analyzing training data for gaps in demographic representation that could manifest in harmful outputs, like reinforcing negative stereotypes. Another measure that we take is evaluating the performance of models against certain benchmarks. For example, to see whether model outputs do in fact produce harmful outputs. And then fine-tuning a model is another measure. For us, we do that to reduce the risk of harmful outputs, for example, by further training it on more representative data sets. Next slide, please, on privacy. Now, AI models and tools will continue to be addressed in Meta's robust privacy review process. And in that process, what we do is we identify privacy risks, we mitigate them, we make sure we have evidence that we've set aside and documented to show and demonstrate that we have mitigated those privacy risks. And of course, this is an ongoing monitoring process. Now, protecting people's information and giving them control, that's right, that's the right slide, is something that's very important to the company. So for example, our privacy review process, this is designed to assess privacy risks that collecting, using, or sharing people's information may present, and then to help figure out what steps we can take to mitigate those privacy risks. And we've taken several steps to mitigate privacy risks arising from the training and the use of our AI models and tools, including when we trained Llama 2, our large language model, we took steps to help ensure that the training data we used excluded the user data of people who use our Meta products and platforms. We took steps to remove data from certain websites that we know contain a high volume of personal information about individuals. And we also train and fine-tune our generative AI models to limit the possibility of personal information that other users may share with our generative AI products from appearing in responses to other people when they interact with those products. Next slide, please. The last one for this segment for myself. Now, on fairness and inclusion. At Meta, we believe that Meta products, especially our AI-driven products and services, should work well for everyone. And this is why fairness is one of our core privacy expectations that help guide our privacy review process, and why our teams are continuously working on tools and tests that aim to minimize potential bias and hope to enable more inclusive and accessible AI. Now, one aspect of fairness when it comes to AI relates to how AI-driven systems may affect groups that have been historically marginalized in society. So we know it's possible for AI systems to learn societal biases through the data produced by people. And the trends in that data, or worse, gaps in representation, can manifest in a range of potential issues, like producing content that reinforces negative stereotypes or erases identities entirely. So that's why our work when it comes to fairness and inclusion, we think of it at three multiple levels. First level, at the product level. We ensure that our product's goals align with providing fair value and treating users fairly. At the policy level, we evaluate if policies address unique harms experienced by subpopulations, especially typically marginalized subpopulations within the product. And then finally, at the implementation level, we assess whether dataset labeling instructions are being executed correctly. And we measure predictive models' performance across all subpopulations to identify and address potential biases or errors. I'll pause here in the interest of time and continue sharing about generative AI risk management during the third segment of our panel.
Okay, thank you very much. If I may ask you one question, do you think what is the most challenging aspect of implementing responsible AI in your opinion?
Oh my goodness, that's indeed a challenging question. But I think one, I wouldn't say the most, but if I could pick out one challenging aspect when it comes to implementing responsible AI, and I'm speaking from the perspective of a data privacy practitioner, someone who's been very deeply involved in data protection, is when it comes to privacy. Because we have to recognize that there are tensions when it comes to data protection laws, for instance, and making sure, for instance, that AI is sufficiently diverse and does not contain biases. One specific example that's quite common when it comes to the privacy circles is we recognize that one goal of AI practitioners is making sure we have a full, diverse data set so that we can guard against biases. A lot of the times, those pieces of personal data that we need for proper training of models might contain sensitive data. But then on the data protection side of things, we recognize that sensitive personal data has to be treated specially. There has to be certain protections around it. And then we also have obligations around, for instance, data minimization. So the challenge here, but a very interesting challenge, is how do we balance the tension between the need for robust AI datasets versus traditional data protection requirements? That's just one. And I'm happy to talk about that at length in another panel or another session.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's move to Ms.Eunice. How about Google?
Yeah.
What is your responsible AI framework? Can you tell us about
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think before I launch into the responsible AI, I just want to frame it a little bit because we need to understand why it's important to be responsible. And I think it's because we are in this moment in the development of the technology where we are seeing a lot of potentially good users for AI, right? So if you go, again, if you go to the Google booth later, you see that we have this product called Flood Hub, which is, basically a tool where we use AI to predict floods up to 7 days in advance, right? Floods are the most common natural disaster in ASEAN. If you look at the statistics, most of the ASEAN countries in the Mekong Delta River area are affected by floods every year, including Thailand. So to have 7 days in advance notice for you to evacuate your populations, to prepare for the floods, I think that's incredible, right? Like the amount of preparedness, the amount of life saves, economic damage that you could avoid is really tremendous. And to be able to use AI for things like that will fundamentally help people is so important. But this is not going to happen if people don't trust the technology, right? If people don't trust that it's being developed in a responsible way. So I think this is really just to frame why it's really important from both a business perspective, but also from a sort of a greater social good perspective to have that trust. For Google, really, what we do is we have since 2017 put in place our AI principles. It basically consists of 7 things that we'll do, top of which is that we believe that overall, before we make any product decision, the benefits must far outweigh the risks. We have things in the principles like, we have to preserve privacy. We need to be able to be accountable to people and be transparent about what we do. And then there are also things that we pledge not to do, right? So we'll not develop things that are against international human rights law. So that set of principles has basically undergirded our approach to development of our products and our deployment of products. So what does that really mean in practice, right? So pre-deployment, our products go through very, very robust internal testing and evaluations. We also have red teaming that is done both internally and externally. We start off with a very cautious approach. We don't go all out big bang because we really understand the power of this technology to potentially cause harm, right? So I think it's only responsible for us to take stage measured approaches to launches. So the way that we have launched BART, which was previously, Gemini, that was previously known as BART, really was we let trusted testers test it first, and then we gradually open it up so that we make sure that there's a continuous loop of user feedback. We can monitor the performance, we can monitor where the risks are, and then adjust accordingly. The nature of AI technology is such that you can develop things and you can test things in a lab, but you never really know how it can go wrong potentially when it's deployed in a real world context. So people who basically say that, okay, we have tested, it's safe, we let it go, I think that is a very wrong sort of interpretation of the way the technology fundamentally works. It's very contextual based. So that's one. Two, really, when we put out products as well, we put in very, very robust classifiers and filters. So what do I mean? We cannot stop people from asking Gemini questions like, how do I create spam emails, for example, right? But you can put in very, very robust classifiers at the output level to weed out things like that, and basically to redirect to trusted sources like Google search. Third, really, what I mentioned just now about user feedback, that loop is really, really important for AI to improve and to mitigate the risk. And lastly, really ecosystem safeguards, right? So it's not just the product itself, but what do you do to educate users about the nature of the technology, how to use it properly, and how to empower developers to use our technology. So when we released Gemma, for example, the open model, we also released responsible AI toolkits to help developers develop things in a way that is safe and secure.
Well, in Thailand, I think probably the most popular Google services that Thai people use is YouTube. How do you use AI to make sure that, I think you use AI in, controlling contents on YouTube, right?
Yes, so AI is used for YouTube recommendation systems, but we're also very aware that increasingly people are generating synthetic content and putting that on YouTube, right? So we don't know whether, for example, a video is really AI generated or not. Late last year, we put out a new policy where basically we are requiring creators to label their videos to say that if it's a synthetic content that is potentially realistic, you have to label it as AI generated. So that is now being enforced globally. If it's a video about a unicorn flying in above Bangkok, then obviously it's not real. Right. But if it's a video of a prime minister speaking, for example, that potentially could have been altered, then yes, that labeling policy applies.
Okay, thank you very much. Now to you, same question. How do Microsoft approach responsible AI?
First of all, Eunice, I can't believe there are no unicorns flying in Bangkok.
I mean, I'm sure there are unicorns flying everywhere in Bangkok, right? It's the city of angels, right?
You disappointed me. No, couple of thoughts. So this was a cover of The Economist, which appeared after ChatGPT went viral and the fruits of Microsoft and OpenAI world came into the public light. And I think Eunice mentioned that as well. We wouldn't be talking about mitigating risk of AI if there was no massive opportunity to actually help us as a civilization to move forward and solve so many societal issues. So I think we need to recognize that the opportunity is great, but at the same time, things may go wrong. And I think that's why we're talking about this here today. One of the important things to state is, and I like the phrase that the ship is safe in the harbor, but that's not what the ships are built for, saying that you can keep the AI in the lab, but that's not where the AI has great potential. You want to work in an open society, get the feedback, learn how it works, what opportunities it can open up. And that's why we need to be all smart and release it at the pace which is appropriate, but at the same time not keep it behind the closed door of the lab. And that's why we are bringing it out to the people and letting people experiment with that and learn from it as well. The another important thing to mention as well is that similarly, don't think that works anymore, is that similarly to cybersecurity, mitigation of AI risk is a shared responsibility. We can work very hard at the platform level. We can help to build some of the mitigations deep in the core of the large language models. But at the same time, the way the technology is brought to the market is through an application. And sometimes we can control it as a platform. Think about our Copilot, where we bring end-to-end user experience. But the more you're going to see custom AI built by different organizations, the more responsibility is going to be shared between different entities building technology and bringing to the real world. From the technology company's perspective, the way we're thinking about AI, it's not too different from other companies. Some of the principles are quite common and recognized. The challenge is, how do you make it real? And I can tell you, if you think about corporate standardization, how do you bring policy people with engineers in the same room and get them talk to each other and understand what do they mean? It's one of the hardest tasks. And we've been through this process, developing 2 different levels of standards, how we build those into engineering process in the company. The second is implementation. How do you build processes to address some of the known risks and then make those changes as you monitor and audit and develop oversight systems? And a great example of both implementation and oversight is a process we developed for sensitive users. there are some sensitive uses creating consequential impact to people, risk of physical harm coming from infrastructure, critical infrastructure being at the core of the system, and then also potentially threatening human rights with invading people's freedom in the society they operate. So that's why we developed several systems to help us understand those risks and also address them in those very specific scenarios. But just to wrap up, what does it mean actually in practice? How we can do that? And we kind of, from Microsoft perspective, we feel like there are 5 different levels to address it. The first one, there's so many government-led AI safety systems in place already. I think Arianne was talking about NIST framework. I think that's a great one. Let's leverage those. They're in place, they're proven, and that's something that can help us build foundations. The second one, yes, we do need safety brakes, especially for those critical infrastructure systems, and that's perhaps where regulation may move fastest. The third one, we need to think about broader global regulatory frameworks, and we're going to talk about those in a moment, that can actually map to the technology architecture of AI, and happy to unpack it later on. The fourth one, we need to figure out what's the best transparency model so that academics and people who are actually researching and dedicating their lives and their professions to this world can actually understand and provide input into the process as we bring it to the real world. And then finally, technology gets developed by private sector companies. So how do the governments, private sector companies, and nonprofits can work together and create the best frameworks looking forward? Because neither of those 3 entities has enough knowledge and input to be able to do it on their own.
Well, one thing I noticed when you starting to use Copilot is that it's the first time that Microsoft is actually to touch the data of your client, right? Because before, even Google, when let's say if I put my data on Google Cloud or Azure, you never touch my data, right? But this time, with a foundation model, things different. I mean, how do you make sure that you don't read our data, you don't do something like this, to make sure the user they feel comfortable that okay, my data is gonna be okay, something like that.
Sure, and I have a good news for you. If you're a Thai government and using your Copilot within your tenant, data stays yours. We don't use that data to train the underlying foundational model. The data can draw on all the insights and knowledge that you have in your own account or your organization has, and develop a collective wisdom and use that collective wisdom for the benefit of the organization. And we fundamentally stick to the same principle. You owe your data as an organization. These are your data sets, these are your assets, and we want to make sure that you feel comfortable and at the same time that you feel you can trust the system. So that's not something what we're going to change. It's quite interestingly, we're actually going a bit further. We also want to provide you assurance that when you're using AI and producing output, we want to make sure that the intellectual property or any other organization doesn't get violated. So we, provided certain parameters are met, we're actually happy to provide you with that assurance so that creators feel comfortable that whatever output they generate, increasingly with the use of AI, it's something that they can claim as theirs, and it's not something what's going to cause them trouble with intellectual property of other entities.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very similar approach. Your data stays yours. We do not use Google Cloud customer data for training of our models at all. And also very similar sort of copyright liabilities that Google Cloud has taken on for its customers. So basically, for the data that's used to train our models, and if it's something that's violative that comes out on your end, we assume certain responsibilities if certain thresholds are met.
Right. Good to hear that, because I got this kind of a lot of question. This question. Let's go to the last question, which is, would you recommend Thai government in terms of what we should do? I mean, in terms of government, of course we can issue laws, regulation, and so on. I mean, with this, what you just describing to us, what the Thai government should be prepared in terms of making sure that we balance between protection and innovation. Dr. Arianne?
Hello, yes,
Okay.
happy to pick one up. Yes, if I could have my slides projected, please. I think we might just have to skip a couple and go to the one that begins with recommendations for AI regulation on letter a principle and outcome-based set of rules. Now for today, please allow us to share 10 recommendations for AI regulation. And actually, these are from the center. Oh, if you could skip to the next one, please. And the next one after that. One more slide, if you would allow me. The next, there you go. We can stop right there. Thank you so much. Now we have 10 recommendations for AI regulation. And for those who want to read this in more detail, I'd encourage you to look at the white paper that was published by the Center for Information Policy Leadership, titled 10 Recommendations for Global AI Regulation. In the interest of time, I'll focus on just a few of them today. The first one is to create a flexible and adaptable framework that defines the outcomes to be achieved rather than prescribing the minute details of how to achieve them. We all know that technology is constantly evolving, and for regulation to be effective, it should be technology neutral. In other words, regulation should not focus on being prescriptive towards specific technologies, because those technologies will inevitably, and as we've seen in the past 18 months, they will rapidly change. So rather than target the current deployment of specific technologies, we think it's wiser to legislate towards a result, towards an end goal. So to achieve this, ideally, regulations should be principles-based and, more importantly, outcomes-based. They should enable organizations to ensure required outcomes such as fairness, non-bias, transparency, accuracy, and security through verifiable internal policies and controls without necessarily having to prescribe how to achieve those outcomes. Another recommendation is building on existing hard and soft law foundations. Existing hard laws such as legislation, rules, regulations, statutes, a lot of these already contain user rights and compliance rules for the use of AI. And relying on those existing frameworks reduces the risk of creating overlapping and possibly even conflicting rules that could create regulatory uncertainty. Now, similarly, the topics of AI regulation that are already covered in other laws such as anti-discrimination laws, intellectual property laws, consumer protection laws, privacy laws, do not need to be reinvented, but we do acknowledge that they may need to be adapted and updated to align with developments in AI technology. Next slide, please. The next one is on demonstrable accountability. So we think at Meta that organizational accountability can be demonstrated objectively, and it should be a core element of AI regulation. So what does this mean? This means encouraging and enabling organizations to use frameworks and governance programs to operationalize legal requirements across all stages of the AI lifecycle. And some examples of organizational accountability measures include codes of conduct, internal assessment processes, like Meta's comprehensive privacy review program. One example that we think is a beneficial one comes from one of our ASEAN neighbors, the Singapore Model AI Governance Framework. It is grounded in principles, but it takes it one step further. It guides organizations on how to operationalize those principles in a flexible and useful framework for organizations of all sizes. And the benefits of having an approach like that would be, it demonstrates a commitment to ensuring that products meet relevant requirements, and it also enables organization to translate those principles that may seem fluffy or fuzzy, but you can actually translate them into concrete risk-based controls. So if governments would invest efforts in creating these guides and these frameworks that can help operationalize principles into guides, we think that might be beneficial for industry and government alike. And then lastly, to my final slide, for our last set of recommendations, is to have smart regulatory oversight. Now, in most circumstances, there should not necessarily be a need for a new overarching AI regulator, but it may be more appropriate to enhance the competencies and the capabilities of existing regulators, and more importantly, to enable high-level AI policy coordination and collaboration across those differing authorities and government agencies. One model that we think could be worth considering is having a standing central governmental coordination body, which should be created to set high-level policy goals when it comes to AI. And then that governmental body would ideally facilitate engagement, alignment, regulatory coordination, and joint action. So an example of this cross-regulatory coordination is already seen in the UK and also in other countries as Australia, France, and Ireland. So the UK Digital Regulation Cooperation Forum is one example. And then lastly, and something that has been alluded to already, is to strive for global interoperability. International cooperation should ideally foster interoperability of all of these various multitude AI policies and regulations that are already emerging. So we accept that different jurisdictions will have their own priorities, will have the system of laws, will have the legal traditions and body of existing regulations. But because of global interoperability efforts, which we hope would gain traction, we hope to be able to coalesce around a set of core principles and a set of uniform approaches in considering AI policy and regulation. And this is why we encourage governments to monitor and join developments around AI interoperability through initiatives being driven by the G7, the OECD, and the Global Partnership on AI, among others. Thank you for letting us share on our views on our recommendations.
Thank you very much. That's really comprehensive. So you, Mike?
I think there are going to be a lot of overlaps in terms of recommendations from the tech companies. But I just want to highlight four. I think Arianne has mentioned some of them. But I think the starting point is always, every country should do a comprehensive study of existing law. And see, actually, a lot of the AI sort of governance questions are already covered in existing law, right? So, for example, anti-discrimination laws. I'm not sure if Thailand has one, but many countries has something like that covers potential, harms that arise from just biased outcomes from AI, right? So that's one. The second one is, I think, something that I really want to emphasize, which is taking a risk-based approach that is focused not at regulating the underlying technology itself, but the applications. And I give you an example. So, if you think about general purpose technologies, which AI is, right? Like engines, right? So you can have an engine that is used in a blender, right? You have an engine that is used in a car, in an aircraft, in heavy machinery, right? These engines are all used in different ways, but the underlying technology is this rotating thing that's an engine. Yeah. If you were to regulate engines, what you end up with is very small engines because you want to optimize for safety, right? You will not have engines that are able to power aircrafts, for example, and that really limits innovation. So what I'm trying to say is really, look at the end context and the end use of AI that is used whether in healthcare, whether in education, whether in manufacturing, and regulate to that context and on a risk-based approach, rather than trying to regulate the underlying models itself. The third thing really that I wanted to raise is on interoperability, on international standards. This is still, to be very honest, in the AI circuit, still a growing field. I was just in Seoul last week for the AI Safety Summit, and I think there was widespread recognition that the science of evaluation for AI safety is still very nascent, and we do need to develop common benchmarks, standards on these things, and the more sort of governments talk to each other on these issues, I think the better and quicker that we'll get in terms of setting standards that can be applied across countries. The last thing that I want to mention is that I think we need to think about not just AI regulation, but AI governance. And governance is really much broader than regulation. In my sort of view, governance has three pillars, right? It has regulation, it has standards, like what I mentioned, but it also has enabling policies, right? So how do you make sure that your country is able to deploy AI effectively, right? It has to do all the way with things like education policy, IP, right? All the way to, talent, visa programs. So if we could just put the slide up, please. We just wanted to draw your attention to a paper that we just released 1 hour ago on the AI opportunity agenda for Thailand, which has essentially 3 pillars of recommendations, of which enabling policy and regulation is just one. We have 3 recommendations. One is really investing in innovation infrastructure. The second is skills. What do we do about skills? And the third is how do we ensure broad and inclusive deployment and adoption? So I encourage people to take a look at this paper and happy to have a conversation further on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Maurice?
Thank you, Dr. Sak. And I agree with Eunice that I think that there's a lot of synergies between different recommendations for a good reason. I think that they just simply make sense. I don't know if this works. I'll perhaps take a different approach. I'll give you a couple of examples from different geographies about the countries which I think that they're doing something right. And I think Thailand is in a great position because it can pick and choose what different countries are doing that actually makes sense. The first example I want to give you is from the UK. What I like about the UK government's approach is that they took innovation first. They thought, hey, how can we design a framework that's going to help our country to innovate and stay ahead? The second approach, which I think the US has done right, from the very beginning, they took a multi-stakeholder approach. They got the tech companies, they got prominent academia, they got the government together and tried to work on this one together without necessarily having a prescribed approach in advance. The third example is Australia. I think one thing the good Australia has done, they started actually adopting technology, adopting Copilot or AI in this case around their government to learn and be able to say firsthand what works and what are the opportunities and risks and how to mitigate them best. And then finally, I have moved to Singapore from New Zealand a couple of weeks ago. One of the great things that New Zealand has done, they actually applied an algorithm charter to its government's own use of AI and algorithms so that government can learn how does this framework work for their own agencies. If you ask me how it's going to look forward, I think AI regulation is going to look a little bit like, or ideally, like international aviation regulation. If you want a plane to fly from Bangkok to Paris, you need to have certain interoperability of different frameworks, acceptance of certain standards and safety testing. You can't really expect Boeing to do the same thing or Airbus in every single country. So I think that this is an approach we would very much encourage as a framework to think about AI regulation. And that's why things like the work that ASEAN has done on its guide on AI governance and ethics is very welcome because it creates this convergence and synergies. And in particular, we would welcome Thailand's involvement into the Hiroshima process and the G7, where I feel a lot of central conversations are happening on AI. And look for those synergies and convergence and strike for the International Aviation Organization like framework for AI so that everybody can benefit of that and benefit of that interoperability and the global opportunity as well.
Well, I think I got a lot of, your recommendation, your insight, your information. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, ETDA as an agency that would look after AI governance for Thailand, I think we really learn from you, especially in terms of laying down the principle as Dr. Arianne said. And my last question, really last question, each one of you, I want you to give me what do you think about EU's AI Act in one sentence. Please be honest. Dr. Arianne.
In one sentence, I think all AI regulations, especially early stage one, would benefit from further refinement so that governments who are looking at them would take the best elements and look to improve and build upon them. I will end it at that.
Thank you very much. Eunice?
I'll be more direct. This is really a position that we think that the EU AI Act started off in a very good place to take a risk-based approach based on context and end users. But in the middle of the negotiations, I think it got to a more complicated place where they tried to then regulate the underlying technology. So I think it's resulted in a regime that is very confusing for a lot of people, a lot of additional compliance costs and procedures. So it remains to be seen how this will impact innovation in the EU. But I do think that every country needs to think about where that balance is between innovation and risk mitigation. and what works best for your local context.
Okay, thank you. Maciej?
I feel bad because I'm the only European here on stage. No, I think that the key message, the positive one, I would say, thinking in a risk-based approach like the EU has, it's actually a great way to approach AI. I feel like Thailand can strike its own balance between high risk and low risk, and opportunity and threats, and look for the best approach in order to drive innovation in Thailand.
Okay. Well, do we have some time? มีเวลาเหลือไหมหมดแล้ว Okay, time's up. Sorry, guys. Okay. I would like to thank all our panelists for a really insightful recommendation for Thailand, and we believe that as AIGC, we would like to work with you in terms of making sure that Thailand would come up with a good governance for AI. Okay. Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
ตบมือได้ครับขอบคุณครับ
ขอบพระคุณค่ะ